My guest today is Rachel Robinson. Did I get it right this time, Rachel?
Robinson,
right. Rachel is a registered dietitian with the ShopRite Corporation. And welcome to the table, Rachel. What I'd like to ask you is that what are the types of diets and that we need with the upcoming holidays that's coming forth? What should we be aware of?
well, if I might, I do like to always open a discussion with the difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist, just so people understand the credential a little bit.
Okay.
So a registered dietitian is a nutrition expert that can, as you mentioned, help people to stick to a certain diet plan, whether that's based in something like heart disease or diabetes, something like a food allergy, or just general healthful nutrition, wanting to know what should I be eating. The difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist is that dietitians have attended college. They do a internship. It's usually about a year, full-time, for free. They work alongside other dietitians to gain experience. And then they sit for a nationally accredited exam. And only at that point are they able to say that they are registered dietitians once they pass the exam. There's continuing education. As for a nutritionist, there's really not so many rules about who can and can't use that word. So usually a nutritionist is somebody who may have some school background, may have some different certifications, but there's no credentialing body that oversees that to say you are a nutritionist, you are not a nutritionist. So much like RN or MD, you just wouldn't use the credential RD after your name unless you had done all of that education.
Now, the education requirements, is that a 2-year college degree or is that a 4-year college?
It's 4-year.
Oh, it's 4 years,
Yes.
okay. But you work together, I would assume, in concert. You dietitians work with nutritionists in terms of developing plans for
They
clients?
can, absolutely.
And do you work with other medical professionals, such as doctors? For an example, if I went to my doctor and he diagnosed that I had hypertension or potentially be diabetic hypertension, can I walk into ShopRite, any other grocery chain, and ask for assistance in developing, say, diets, basically? How can I improve my diet? Do you work with us, basically?
Sure.
To the public, yeah.
So at ShopRite, we do have 4 stores in the capital region, and 2 of those we have a dietetic technician who works in the store and does store tours, cooking demonstrations, can offer product information. So for anybody who sort of has seen the doctor and gets this information, maybe I need to follow low salt or low sugar, something like that, they can definitely go see our dietetic technician to get some recommendations for actual practical products that would fit those needs.
Now, should one contact the store to find out when these courses or lessons are offered? Is this something that's scheduled, or is you just happen to put these displays out and as people walk through the store?
It is scheduled. I'm glad you asked. It's a scheduled thing.
Okay.
If people are interested, they can either stop by our store at 709 Central Avenue or the Niskayuna store and pick up a copy of her calendar, or you can visit ShopRite.com, and under the Health and Wellness tab, there's a calendar of events. So you can find out if she has a cooking demonstration that you'd like to come and sample the product. You can find out if we have screenings 4 times a year, so things like a glucose screening or a cholesterol screening, and those are free.
Oh, those are free, huh?
Yep, those would be on the calendar of events as well.
Okay. Obesity, I want to talk about that because I think that's a real health cost driver, and I think a lot of folks are experiencing with that. How can we combat obesities in terms of our daily lives? What are the things that we need to look for?
Well, I think that's a good sort of segue to the MyPlate.
Okay.
So the MyPlate is something from the USDA that tells us, much like the food pyramid did, what are the food groups.
USDA, what is the USDA?
United States Department of Agriculture. So the MyPlate is like the food pyramid, but that had some skinny lines, some fat lines, wasn't really a great visual. The MyPlate is the actual portions of how much we want of each food group on our plate.
Okay.
So it's a lot easier to visualize. Don't ever eat off a plate this big. The My Plate
I was going to say that's a very large portion you have there.
It's just for show, but it's based on a 9-inch plate. So that's one important thing you can do to make sure that you're not overeating is go home, look at your plates, your bowls, your cups.
So don't use your regular plate, but use a small...
A 9-inch plate. Like, you can use a salad plate or...
a salad plate.
Yeah,
that's what
a
I was
dessert plate,
say.
something smaller. So the main principles of the My Plate are that you'll notice half the plate is fruits and vegetables. These are things that are high in fiber, which is very filling, vitamins and minerals, very nutritious for fighting disease. So half the plate should be fruit, I like to say, or vegetables, because maybe at breakfast it's fruit, maybe at dinner it's vegetables. And you want to try and eat a rainbow of different colors. That's the best way to get all the different nutrients.
And rainbow meaning what?
For fruits and vegetables. Yeah. So your red fruits and vegetables might have more lycopene. Your orange ones might have more beta-carotene.
What is beta-carotene?
It's useful for your eyes. It's good for your skin. Grains, the recommendation is that at least half your grains should be whole grains. What that means, when the grain comes from the ground, the part that we eat is called the kernel. And there's 3 parts to that. When they refine or process, so they're turning a whole wheat flour into a white flour or a whole wheat bread into white bread, they only use one of the 3 parts of the grain. And the parts they don't use are full of vitamins and minerals and that stomach-filling fiber. So you throw all that out, and what you're left with isn't as nutritious or filling. So some examples of whole grains would be things like oats, brown rice, whole wheat pasta or whole wheat bread, even things like quinoa.
But it's brown when it comes to grains and rice, and as I said to you before I went on the air, I don't use white sugar, granulated sugar. There's some discussion about what type of grain. Is brown grain rice better than white rice? Health-wise, is that? What are your thoughts on that, Billy?
So whole grains are more nutritious than refined and processed grains because they still contain the bran, which is the part that's loaded with fiber. So actually some people think different things that contribute to heart disease might be things like fats, but we're also finding out that refined and processed grains also play a big part, not just in diabetes, but heart disease and other disease states. So as far as protein goes, you want to choose lean protein choices. So maybe around the holidays, try and stick with things like poultry without the skin, having smaller servings of high sodium things like ham or higher fat cuts of meat, but also lean cooking methods. And so if you take that nice healthy chicken breast and then you bread it and fry it and make chicken parmesan, it's not so healthy anymore. So it's not just lean proteins, but lean cooking methods. And then also plant protein, so things like nuts and seeds, beans and legumes.
But for vegetarians, the people who don't eat meat, what would you recommend another source of protein? Because we all need protein for muscle building and all those other good things.
Absolutely.
What could they substitute meat? Because there are a lot of people, my sister's a vegetarian, she doesn't eat meat per se.
Absolutely.
Fish, but not meat. But there's been controversy about whether or not it provides enough proteins. Are there other things that can provide the same level of protein that meat does?
Sure. So protein is something that's found in larger amounts in some foods and smaller amounts in other foods. So for starters, if someone's a vegetarian, they just want to be able to include variety. And that can be a good way to make sure that you're getting enough protein. And it's also important to remember that everyone's protein needs are different. So smaller amounts might be needed for some people. And if they're mindful of including some of the high-protein plant options, things like the tofu or other beans, for example, the soy milk, because it comes from a soybean, is a good source of protein, even hemp hearts and flax.
You said something that I wasn't familiar with. Say that again. Hemp hearts?
Hemp hearts,
What is that?
So they hull the seed from hemp, and it's something that you can put in a smoothie, you can put it on yogurt, some people sprinkle it on a salad, or even just eat it plain.
And you can purchase that in the stores as well?
Yes, you can.
And which section? Is that a specialty section?
We do have an aisle where we have most of our natural and organic products, and that's where it would be.
Okay. As we approach the holiday season, we've gone through Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's. Give us some thoughts and at least help me out, because I'm tempted because of the culture foods that we celebrate with for the holidays. We all celebrate differently, but it's all around food. It doesn't really matter. Are there any substitutes that we can use in place of the normal seasoning that we use for cakes and pies and things of that nature? Because that seems to be the important. Desserts is always important in the holidays. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? Give us some tips in terms of how we can eat a little bit more healthier during those holidays without consuming too much.
So one of my favorite substitutions for baking is actually, I tend not to use eggs instead.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
No eggs?
Nope.
What do you replace eggs with?
You can use a 1/4 cup of applesauce or any other kind of puree as a substitute. So it could be mashed banana, it could be pumpkin puree, and you just substitute that for egg, 1/4 cup per egg. And even applesauce doesn't really give it an apple taste. It just makes it very moist and still good.
No kidding. So the outcome of this, if someone looked at that and without tasting it, it looks like the cake that you normally want to bake, the pie you want to make. So it's actually replace eggs as a substitute.
Yes, I can give you an example. I made pancakes for my sister and brother-in-law and niece recently, and I made mine with the applesauce, but because my niece is 5 and you know how children can be, they said, can you just make hers the regular way? But they did try mine and said, wow, that's even better than ours.
They didn't know the difference unless you told them.
So, yeah, I know you might be hesitant at first, but if you try it, I think you won't even notice.
And what about salt substitute? I don't know if there's any substitute for pepper, but I mean, I know people, sodium, have to limit their intake with sodium. What can you replace sodium with? What are the spices or anything that you've tried or aware of that you can use instead of using salt? Sure.
I mean, I love herbs and spices for seasoning my food, and I think the more flavorful you make it, you really don't miss the salt if you flavor it really well. Some people do also like using a squeeze of something like lemon juice or maybe some kind of vinegar to give it a little bit of that same pucker as salt. There is a salt substitute, things like no salt or low salt. Those are some products on the market, but it is important to be careful for anybody who may have problems with their kidneys. That's not really a great substitute. Instead of trying to substitute, I would recommend swapping it out altogether with some really good fresh herbs at the end of cooking or some different dried spices. So something, even in baking, something like cinnamon to replace
I love
the
cinnamon.
need for
That's
extra
one of
sugar.
my favorite spices, as a matter of fact, yeah. Because I know that's the struggle that a lot of people have with traditional, what I call traditional recipes. At least I know in holiday times people like to stick to, well, you know, I'm so used to having this. And I guess it's okay to cheat during the holidays times. I often encourage people that you have to develop lifestyle and diets that you know that you can live with.
Absolutely.
You just can't, you have to be committed to those kinds of things. So if you're not committed, it's not going to work anyway. So
no, and I don't even like to say cheat, because to me cheat implies that you're on a diet and you're cheating, but you're not. You're just a person who's living a healthy lifestyle, and that includes enjoying the things that you like in moderation. So, you know, if you're going to, cheating makes it seem like you feel kind of bad about it.
Well, that's the term I use, and
a lot of people use it.
Of making me feel guilty, I guess.
Exactly, but if you're going to enjoy a little something, don't feel guilty, right? Have a small amount, enjoy it. And then,
in moderation is really the trick to
absolutely.
everything, I think. Is sometimes it's not what you eat, it's how much you eat that matters, really. So that's really some good tips for our viewers to take in consideration for the holiday period. Are there some other things that you maybe want to share with us that we didn't cover at this point in time? In terms of that, one of the things that I want to mention is, because it's important to me, is that I always describe life as the good health as the building blocks of good life, and exercise is important, diet is important, and sleeping is very important. And that's something. You have any thoughts on that? Because the average person really do not get sufficient, adequate sleep. People are struggling with sleep problems in this country. Definitely. And diet sometimes relate to that problem.
It does.
Sometimes people eat too late at night. I'm guilty of that as myself. It doesn't preclude me from sleeping, but I think those combinations clearly is the solution for what I call building blocks for good health. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's important to really know your own body. So, for example, caffeine sensitivity.
Okay.
I'm pretty sensitive to caffeine. And for some people, they're not, right? They can drink a cup of coffee and go right to bed. But for the people that are a little more sensitive to caffeine, I might see someone who's got a coffee or an energy drink because they didn't sleep well, but that can kind of lead into a little bit of a cycle where you're caffeinating yourself to be up and then you can't sleep. So just being mindful of things like coffee or tea or chocolate or even sodas, things that would contain caffeine, maybe cutting yourself off at a certain time of day and sticking to things that won't disrupt your sleep. And then it's actually really important to just go to sleep the same time every day. Make a bit of a routine for yourself if that's something that your sort of lifestyle allows, because that's, getting yourself into a bit of a routine, doing things like turning off
televisions, and computers.
Phones,
and I was going to mention that
things.
because of the technology and where we are today. Even kids in school are experiencing difficulty because they spend an inordinate amount of time, sometimes necessary, sometimes not necessary, on the computers at night. Parents that have problems, they go to sleep and their kids are up until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, engaged in whatever activity they want to do on the computers. So I think sleep is very important, and I think it's equally as important as the other things we discussed today.
It is.
And I'm going to ask you a question that genetics, does that play a part in the way we live our lifestyle?
It can, absolutely. Genetics can play a part of certain things. So, for example, somebody may look at one of their parents and see their any disease they may have, their body type, things like that. It makes that more of a possibility for you to have some of those things. However, there's also some other things that contribute. So, for example, if your parents are overweight because they adapted poor habits, then it's not just genetics if you also adapt the same poor habits. So it's important to be able to distinguish between things that are in your control and things that are out of your control. So, for example, things that are in your control would be diet and exercise, portion control, not smoking, keeping your weight managed. Those are all things that would contribute to better health. So while you may have certain genetic predisposition in your family, there is a lot you can do.
Well, I know in my family we have that because diabetes runs in my family, hypertension runs in my family. My father died as an amputee because of diabetes, and so I'm very sensitive to that part of it. And clearly it played a real tragic part in his life because he did not follow the diet instructions. So that was it. Did we cover the plate portion yet? Is there anything else you want to add to what we've discussed at this point?
Yeah, I think
the food groups we talked about. I believe.
Did. Yeah, I think the only thing we left off was the recommendation for dairy is low fat or fat free. But I did bring some food models to be able to show some examples of portion size. And
one of the things we didn't really mention, and I interrupted you, is water. In terms of consumption of water versus sodas and juice, I'm guilty of that. I don't drink enough water. Consume enough water. It's part of my diet. I just want to insert that. Really.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no water on this plate, but it's definitely very important to have enough water. And some of these new technologies can actually be our friend for something like that. They have apps that can help remind you to drink water. I like to put mine in bottles that I know the measurements of, so I can be sure if I finish those bottles, I've had all the water that I need for the day. And
what's the recommended amount of water that you suggest that people consume a day?
It depends on the size of the person and their current body weight, but that's definitely something to ask your friendly registered dietitian about what your specific recommendations would be.
Yeah, water is the hottest selling item now. They sell more water than they sell sodas, which is interesting.
Which is wonderful.
It is wonderful, but when I grew up, when suggested that you purchase water, it was like, that's so ridiculous. I honestly never thought that water would outsell sodas and juices, but apparently that's where we are, and I think it's a good thing too. Yeah. So, Rachel, let's talk about portions, okay? We talked about water and we talked about the full plate, but let's talk about portions now.
Okay. So, As I mentioned, one thing that's important is half your plate should be fruits and vegetables. So I did bring some examples of portion size. So this, for example, would be a portion of broccoli, your favorite.
Oh, yeah.
Half a cup. We have some green beans here. And then for fruit, especially for someone with diabetes, I hear people say a lot that they can't eat fruit because they're diabetic. And that makes me crazy because fruit does have sugar in it, but it also has fiber that keeps us feeling full and lots of disease-fighting vitamins and minerals. So portion size actually for fruit can be really important because a lot of times we just assume that whatever size it comes is one serving, right? So this would be a medium size piece of fruit.
So you mean the size of the orange is measured in terms of portions, right?
Exactly.
So if I go and get a large, what do you call the large
like
oranges?
a grapefruit or something. Grapefruits are more than one serving. Bananas are more than one serving of fruit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I eat a banana every day. So I eat two whole bananas. Is that a full portion?
Well, so one thing that's interesting about eating two of something is that you're missing out on the opportunity to have that variety.
Oh, okay.
So swapping out that second banana for a different kind of fruit would be a great way to get other nutrients from that eating the rainbow that we talked about earlier.
But I get the potassium from the banana. My primary source of potassium, I think, comes from my
Oranges have potassium as well.
Oh, okay.
So there you go. There's your variety.
Okay.
So as far as the grains and protein go, this tends to be where the plate gets a little heavy for some people. So maybe the fruits and vegetables are kind of lacking. One thing in particular, we talked about different sort of cultural diets. So for rice and beans, rice and beans, this is what a serving of rice and beans would look like. So it's smaller than what a lot of people are currently eating. But if I put it on the plate, they might say, well, that's all I can have. No, it's not. You can have plenty of fruits and vegetables to round out your plate and a little bit of low-fat or fat-free dairy to go with it. So another thing people may not realize is that you can actually use your hands to help you estimate portion size. So a serving of meat, this is our little chicken breast
here.
But
it also depends on the size of your hand, too.
It's true. The larger the person, the more they should eat. So a serving of meat is about 3 ounces. It's about the size of a deck of cards or about the size of your palm. So yes, somebody who's got a larger hand than me should be eating more
Football
meat,
players,
certainly.
basketball players,
yes.
Big hands. Yeah.
Absolutely. Here we have a serving of walnuts, so sort of a handful of nuts. Something that I like to do with nuts is make sure that I eat them one at a time, because if I scooped them, maybe 2, but if I scoop the whole thing, it can go down the hatch, and then I'm like, where's my next snack? So sort of taking that time to be mindful and slow down and really savor your snacks can be a good way to make the most of those smaller portion sizes. So here I have a sample of what a bowl of cereal would look like. This is about 3/4 of a cup. And another thing for serving size that I recommend to people is resist the temptation to sort of double up on food groups. So if this was your breakfast, your dairy and your grains right here, and you eat this and you're still hungry, try not to say, I'm just going to have another bowl of cereal. Try and look at the balance of the plate and say, well, what am I maybe missing from my plate that would maybe fill me up? So if you had some grains and some dairy, maybe a piece of fruit would be a little bit of fiber to help give you that fullness that you need.
Well, my experience is that I can eat oatmeal, which is one of my favorite cereals in the morning, and I can eat a bowl of oatmeal, and it'll stay with me until lunchtime. But if I eat a bowl of cold cereal, it doesn't last very long with me. It just doesn't, fill me up like oatmeal does.
It may not have as much fiber depending on the cereal that you have. Some of them are very low in calories, but they're also low in protein, low in fiber, low in all those things that would keep you feeling full until lunchtime. So everybody's different. It's important to listen to your body.
And to recognize those differences, right?
Exactly.
What is this? This is something you put on display here.
Sure.
Share with us what that's all about.
So this is an example of something from our new product line, which is called Wholesome Pantry. So Wholesome Pantry items are free from 110 ingredients. You can definitely read more on ShopRite.com if you're interested which 110. But it involves a lot of things like artificial flavors, high fructose corn syrup, things that you wouldn't want to find in your food things that you can pronounce, things that are simple. So we have 2 lines of Wholesome Pantry. It's just replacing the ShopRite private label. So it's the same things that you always enjoyed that were ShopRite brand, but now they're called Wholesome Pantry. And
is this the
one,
beginning of a new brand that ShopRite is offering their customers?
Yes, so one thing we're doing is just replacing, but also expanding. So we have a whole new line of nuts and other nut snack mixes that are available. So in addition to just changing, let's say, the ShopRite organic milk to the Wholesome Pantry milk, we're also expanding the line. And you can see here, this one has a purple banner on it. That's for the organic. And then the ones without the purple banner are just natural, conventional, but not organic.
So this is pumpkin. What's coming out next?
Right now in the store, I have seen the pumpkin, I have seen the nut mixes, I've seen the marinara sauces.
Oh, no kidding. Marinara sauces? Oh, no kidding. Okay.
So we have quite a few things, and it's going to be launching from now till about May. So as time goes on, keep your eyes open. There's going to be more things
So do you have
coming.
a media campaign with this? Is this just word of mouth?
Well,
how are you marketing this? I guess that's really the question I'm asking.
Sure. Well, we are reaching out to our customers. So, for example, we'll go back to that ShopRite organic milk. Anybody who's ever bought that milk, we're reaching out to them to let them know it's the same milk that you always enjoyed, but look for the different label. So.
Am I expect to see samples in the stores?
Absolutely. Okay. Just yesterday in the store, I saw them sampling out some of the nut mixes.
Oh, okay. And what's the response has been at this point? Do you know?
It's great. I mean, some of them are things that aren't really things that other people are offering, certain combinations that are maybe new to the market.
Okay. So when you come up with one for sweet potato pie, let me know.
Sure will.
Sure. Well, Rachel, I really want to thank you for coming in today.
Thank you so much for having me on today.
Pleasure having you.
Just to sort of recap what we've talked about today, you had the chance to review the My Plate, keeping this in mind not just around the holidays but all year round for how to balance your meals. We did talk a little bit about portion size, again, extra hard during the holidays, but just as important to be consistent throughout the year. We talked a little about the Wholesome Pantry line, launching with ShopRite, the importance of the whole picture, right? Diet, exercise, getting enough sleep, drinking plenty of water, and just general health. So I'll see you at ShopRite, and anyone can feel free to stop in and take advantage of some of these great services. Go to one of the cooking demonstrations, maybe a store tour, and we'll see you down at ShopRite.
Well, Rachel, I want to thank you for coming in today and sharing some tips with us. You covered a wide range of areas, and I'm certainly our viewers will appreciate that. And I want to thank the viewers for tuning in today, and enjoy the holiday. Have a safe holiday, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.